All righty then. It is 3 o'clock, Wednesday, November 12th. Welcome back to the Coaching Corner. I'm Jason Brooks, and today we're diving into the most underestimated and most powerful aspects of leadership. And you know what that is? Time discipline. Now, when I say time discipline, I'm not talking about squeezing more minutes out of your day or even micromanaging your schedule. You do that well enough. This isn't about time management. It's about time culture because catering time is more than a resource. It's a rhythm. The way your team treats time reflects how they treat your clients, your standards, and each other. Think about it. When you walk into a kitchen that's already moving in sync, it just feels different. The energy is calm. The people know what's next, and everyone's moving with purpose. That's time culture at work, and you can coach that. So today's coaching corner is all about how to coach the clock, how to build time discipline into your team so that on time performance, consistent prep, and smooth handoffs become second nature, not having something you have to chase. And by the end of this session, I promise you'll have a practical framework you can use to move your team from being reactive under pressure to rhythmic under purpose. Okay, let's jump in. I love to have presentations. I love to have something for you to actually view and see. So let's get into it. When it comes to operations, especially in catering, time discipline isn't a nice to have, it's a multiplier. Because here's what happens when it's missing: late prep equals rushed service, rushed service equals sloppy execution, and sloppy execution equals lost trust. And once trust starts slipping, whether that's between you and your team or between your team and your clients, it takes 10 perfect events to earn that back. In our world, timing is everything. The difference between on time and 5 minutes late isn't just a clock issue, it's a customer experience issue. It's the difference between walking into an event where everything looks calm and confident versus walking into one where the team's still scrambling behind the scenes. Time discipline is really about emotional control. Let's be honest. When a team's rhythm falls apart, their confidence goes with it. And when timing becomes part of the culture, when your people take pride in being ready early and prepared, the whole organization just performs differently. Now, here's the key: time issues are rarely about effort. Your people aren't lazy, they're uncoached in rhythm. That's what today's session is all about: how to coach that rhythm back into your culture so the pace of your operation becomes your competitive advantage. Here's the truth about most operations right here: it's not that people don't care about time, it's that they're trapped in how they think about it. We fall into what I call the time trap, and it shows up in three ways. First, urgency. We live in a constant state of rush. Every moment feels like we're behind, even when we're not. We start the day already reacting instead of leading. In catering, urgency feels productive. There's movement, there's energy, everyone's hustling. But the problem is, urgency hides inefficiency. It looks like progress, but it's often just noise. Second, the reaction cycle. This is when your team spends the whole day putting out fires. They're great at fixing problems, but they're terrible at preventing them. Sound familiar? You walk through the kitchen And it's one question after another. Where's the van key? Who packed the salad? Everyone's responding, no one's anticipating. And that's the trap. Coaching breaks that cycle by teaching people to think ahead of time, not in time. And third, near misses. You know the phrase, almost on time? That's the most expensive phrase in catering. It's the truck that pulls out 5 minutes late, but gets lucky with less traffic. It's the order that's missing one item, but the client doesn't notice this time. Near misses build a false sense of security. The team thinks, we pulled it off, but really, you just dodged a bullet. And when near misses become normal, standards start slipping quietly. So the time trap is this: urgency replaces planning, reaction replaces rhythm, and near misses that replaces what I call excellence. And the good news is all of this can be coached. That's where we're headed next. How to move from urgent and reactive to intentional and rhythmic. And I promise you, since I'm talking about rhythm, I'm going to have some boy band references throughout this as well. So please be ready. So we looked at what happens when time runs the show. Urgency takes over, people react instead of plan, and the team lives in that constant, almost on time zone. Now, let's talk about how you coach your way out of that cycle. This is the framework I call the 3 time shifts. Small mindset shifts, moves that create big operational change. The first shift, urgent to intentional. Urgency keeps teams busy. Intention, though, keeps teams aligned. When everything feels like a fire, it's hard to tell what actually matters. When you start leading intentionally, opening the day with clarity, setting checkpoints, assigning ownership, you start winning time back before the clock even starts. The second shift, reactive to rhythmic. Great catering teams don't run on chaos, they run on cadence. Rhythm is that predictable flow from prep to getting it done. And then the third is clock watching versus time ownership. Clock watching is passive. You tell me when it's time. Ownership is active. I know what time it is, and I'm ready for what's next. That's the difference between compliance and accountability. When your team takes ownership of time, they don't need constant reminders. They start protecting the standard themselves. These 3 shifts, from urgent to intentional, reactive to rhythmic, and clock watching to ownership, are what turn time from a pressure point into a performance advantage. So let's unpack each of these and see what the action looks like. So the first shift, urgent to intentional. This is all about leadership rhythm. When you lead from urgency, your team follows your pace, not your plan. Let's be honest, most catering days start like a sprint. People clock in, grab their list, start moving before alignment even happens. They're in cruise control. But that's how small details slip. The salad dressing that didn't make it onto the van, the hot box that never got plugged in, the prep sheet that nobody double checked. But when you coach intentionality into your day, everything slows down just enough to speed up later. I always tell leaders, plan it once, execute it twice. What that means is you lead the day with clarity before you lead it with activity. 5 minutes of clear communication in a pre shift huddle will save you 50 minutes of confusion later. That pre-shift huddle can be via Zoom, phone, however that you want to have it. But that pre-shift huddle, that 5 minutes, saves you nearly an hour later. Now, here's what it looks like in practice. Instead of saying, all right, everybody knows what to do, let's go. You've probably said that before. Instead, say, let's walk through our timeline. What's our first pressure point for today? What's our goal time for pack out? That kind of dialogue trains your team to think forward instead of just reacting to what hits them first. You're teaching them that time discipline isn't about moving faster, it's about moving smarter. Because when everyone starts from the same plan, you don't have to chase the clock all day. You're already ahead of it. Shift number 2, reactive to rhythmic. And I love this one because rhythm is what separates a good catering team from a great one. Let me say it this way: rhythm beats rush. You can't out hustle disorganization. You can only out rhythm it. When you walk into a high performing catering operation, you can actually feel the rhythm. The team isn't just working hard, they're working in sync, like everybody's favorite boy band. Bye, 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 bye. I'm kidding, but everybody knows the beat. That rhythm is built on 5 anchors, what I call the service flow cycle: prep, pack, load, check, and deliver. Now, we can't make that into a song, but you get it though. These are the hardest points of your business. When you coach around them, you turn chaos into cadence. Let's walk through it. I know your teams know these 5 points, but let's walk through it. Prep. This is your first tempo maker. This is the metronome. The goal here isn't speed, it's readiness. Coaching in this phase sounds like what needs to be done now to make the next phase easier. And then there's pack. Pack is where the most mistakes happen because it's where handoffs begin. Your coaching here isn't about anything else but precision. How are we verifying completeness before sealing anything? And then load. This is your logistic rhythm. The focus isn't just about getting things into the van, it's sequencing the load for success on site. Check. The quality control heartbeat. It's that moment to pause before the movement. Teach your team to breathe in this part here, not just rush it. And then deliver. This is the show. This is where they're on stage. Coaching here means reinforcing the standard, presentation, timing, and calm confidence on site. When teams are reactive, they live in constant interruption. But when you build rhythm, when these 5 anchors on the screen become part of your coaching routine, people start anticipating instead of apologizing. The best catering teams move like music. Each role is a different instrument, but everyone's playing that same damn song. That's why I say rhythm beats rush every single time. Now, the third shift, the last shift, clock watching to time ownership. It's where everything comes together. You can have great systems, great checklists, and even a great rhythm. But if your team doesn't own their time, you'll always be the one holding it together. You will always be the one holding it together. See, clock watching is passive. It's waiting to be told when to start, when to stop, and when to fix something. It's compliance. But time ownership is active. It's awareness, accountability, and pride. It's when your people start saying, I know what's next and I'm ready. But let's make this real. When someone's just watching the clock, they'll glance up, see it's 10:55 and think, "Oh, I should start packing that delivery." But when they own the time, they're already moving at 10:45 because they understand what has to happen before the next moment hits. Ownership creates anticipation, and anticipation is that secret weapon for every high performing team, not just catering team, any team. But the question is how? How do you coach that? How do you coach time ownership? You teach your team to protect time, not track it. That means building small reflection habits, asking question like, what's the next 5-minute decision I can make that saves us time later? Where might we lose time today? And how do we protect against it? You want your people thinking like time investors, not time spenders. When your team starts protecting time this way, you'll notice something powerful. You won't have to push them anymore. They'll start pulling themselves. That's what real coaching does. It creates momentum you no longer have to manage. That is secret sauce. Now, let's bring this to life. Real example, something simple but powerful. One of the catering brands I've coached had a consistent problem. They were always technically on time, but never actually ready. And you know what I mean. The truck would pull out right at go time, but there'd be that last second scramble like, did we grab the tongs? Who has the invoice? Did we send the invoice? Everything got done, but it came at a cost of adrenaline and stress. Some of you love that adrenaline, but it's not healthy over time. So we built what we called the 7-minute rule. 7 minutes before any departure, everything stops. Phones down, checklist up, everyone aligned. No packing, no loading, no running around. Just 7 minutes to breathe, confirm, and communicate. Those 7 minutes became sacred. And here's what happened within a month, their on time departure rate jumped by over 40%. But that wasn't the real win. The real win was the confidence it created. The energy shifted. The team wasn't running from behind anymore. They were walking in front of the clock. See, the 7-minute rule wasn't about time. It's about intentional space, creating room for reflection, confirmation, and pride before they start motion. Every team needs their own version of that, some kind of ritual that reinforces readiness. Because when your team learns to protect those moments, they're no longer working for the clock. They're coaching themselves through it. Now, let's go ahead and shift into a Q&A. I actually want to open it up. Yes, I have some questions on the screen in order to help prompt some thoughts, but I actually want to know what you're thinking. What are some questions that you may have? All right, you say time is a culture, not just a schedule. What's the first sign that a team's time culture needs to work? What's the first sign that a team's time culture needs work? I'd say that the very first sign is everyone coming to you with a question of what to do next. Because the very first step in any time culture is the other C word. Besides culture, clarity. That clarity is that moment that everyone understands what happens in each next 5, 10, 15-minute segment of what they need to do prior to leaving, when they get to the location, how to set up the location, how to break it back down, and coming back afterwards. If everyone's coming to you with questions of what to do next, there is no clarity. And without clarity, you cannot have a time culture because that clarity has them understanding what the next step should be, not just scrambling to look busy. And we've all worked with those teams, in those teams, been a part of those teams to where nothing is clear. It's just that things need to get done. And we hope and pray at the end of that moment, everything comes together, kind of like a horse with blinders on, but you have six of them all together facing different directions. That doesn't work. We don't build business and culture by luck. We build that through clarity. Hopefully that answers that question. What's one common mistake leaders make when trying to enforce time discipline that actually backfires? What's one common mistake that leaders make when trying to enforce time discipline that actually backfires? The common mistake is, here, I'll show you. That's what every team member wants us to do. Step in and do it. They are puppeteers. They know how to pull our strings to make us step in and do it. And then we're just doing their job for them. The very first thing that we should be doing whenever we're trying to enforce time discipline is to have them think through how they view time. How are they viewing their time? What is the thing that they find the most important? And then, secondly, another thing that backfires is that us not connecting with what they find important. We do a great job at verbalizing the things we find important, the things that drives us crazy. We want everyone to think like us. If there were 28 Jasons in a room, I'd be great. No, I'd go bananas. I don't want 28 Jasons. But what I need to do though is I need to find out what everyone else, what that person, what is the thing that drives you crazy? What drives you from sane to insane? What's that thing that makes your blood boil whenever something goes wrong? Now, how can I connect that to a system that's probably not being completed? So instead of jumping in and doing it and saying, watch me, find out the things that they find important and then connect that to a system to where they can gain back more sanity and see that relying on systems actually work to their benefit versus shooting from the hip and just rolling on cruise control. How do you coach accountability without micromanaging, especially when it comes to time sensitive tasks like delivery windows? How do you coach accountability without micromanaging, especially when it comes to time sensitive tasks like delivery windows? I think that when it comes down to it, when you really come down to micromanaging is you really falling back into the role that you're most comfortable with. You're finding a reason in order to start doing something that you are most comfortable doing versus leading and coaching. So the micromanaging aspect is really all about you. It's not about that person. It is all about you finding ways to not have to feel like you are have to be the one that's in control. Leaders in catering constantly deal with variables that they can't control. Let's be honest. We can't control clients. We can't control staffing, can't control weather or the deliveries. So every time they ask, what if? Pull it back to the things that they can control because micromanaging just feels like they don't understand what the next step is. So we should just jump in and do it. But asking the what if, giving them that clarity, the understanding that they can't control chaos, it starts to put more rhythm within their operations. Can you share an example where building rhythm across prep, pack, load, and deliver led to a measurable improvement in performance. Can you share an example where building rhythm across prep, pack, load, and deliver led to a measurable improvement in performance? I'd say the best example is the one that I gave earlier about that 40% increase on time deliveries of creating that 7 minute space. When you create that intentional space of having that 7 minutes, that there is no more packing, there is no more prepping, there is no more loading. It's just you there with the clipboard or your iPad and your team walking through everything for 7 minutes. The thing that does is if you intentionally create that space, you make room for things you can't control. The things you can't control is the clients that are always adding on extra things at the last minute, that last minute phone call. The things you can't control is the traffic, is the weather, is someone calling out. If you constantly build in the buffer for calm, everything else makes sense. Because prep is really just one phase. Prep is ongoing. Packing isn't one phase. You didn't stop all prep and start packing. You didn't stop all packing and start loading. All of these rhythms bleed into each other, just like an amazing song. But when you pause, I told you there'd be a lot of boy band references. When you pause for that climax of the song that you've been waiting for, that you want to belt out your own tone, when you pause and think through it all, that's when it all comes together. So I hate to sound corny, but that is the best way. And the measurable improvement on performance is building in that pause every single time. What's your go-to method for creating time anchors that stick with the team or become part of their daily habits? What's your go-to method for creating time anchors that stick with the team and become part of their daily habits? I'd say a part of those time anchors deals with how large that the catering is, how many people. Once you understand what the per person count is, how big, whether it's 50 people, 100 people, and you can create that in segments of the time anchors for this many people. Now you're looking at the clock differently versus it doesn't matter whether it's a catering of 15 or a catering of 225. Once you can break that into time segments by the amount of head counts, you're more so able to create that daily habit and that anchor that sticks with your team of how they're changing how they view time than what they do now. It's just like prep. For some reason, on Tuesdays, everyone always preps 15 pounds of coleslaw because it's Tuesday. No, you have to look at a lot more things than what day of the week. It is what time of the year. It's is there a concert in town? It's is there catering? Is there a lot of foot traffic that's going to be in the area? Is there bad weather? All of that changes the rhythm. And then, of course, forecasting. But all of that changes the rhythm of what's really going on when you start really looking at time differently versus I just start doing this at this time and you're anchoring that with the actual size. Now you start looking at the actual time differently. Alrighty. It is 3:29. Let's wrap this baby up. Let's get back into where we are at here. Key takeaways. Key takeaways for today. Now, if there's anything that you walk away with, first of all, Bye 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 is the most amazing song created by NSYNC. But besides that, if you don't have to chase time, if you don't have to chase time, you can actually coach it. Intentional prep. Every great event, every great shift, every great day starts with clarity. Prep isn't just about the food. When you slow down enough to define success before the rush, you reclaim time that would otherwise get lost in confusion. Intentional prep mentally and physically is more about not just meetings, not just food prep. It's purposeful moments that align your team before the motion begins. Second, rhythm builds reliability. The best catering teams don't run on adrenaline. It may feel cool in the start, but they run on rhythm. They have a tempo. Prep, pack, load, check, deliver. Everyone knows the flow. And because of that, they trust each other. And then reliability is born out of that rhythm, not reaction. I think the third takeaway, ownership transforms culture. This is the ultimate goal. When people start owning their time, their role, their readiness, everything changes. They take pride in being ahead of the clock, not just on the clock. Ownership is contagious too. It's what turns a group of team members into a confident, consistent team. If you remember nothing else from this coaching corner, just remember this: coaching time discipline isn't about perfection, it's rhythm, reflection, and pride in performance. You can't always control the chaos of the day. You can't control that, but you can lead the rhythm that carries your team through it. Now, as you wrap up, thank you. Last final thought: consistency. It's not easy these days. Getting into the holidays, getting into end of year, getting into vacations, getting into a up ramp, and people calling for caterings last minute. It's not easy, but it's built in the conversations you have when things are at their messiest. That's the real heart of leadership. Coaching doesn't happen when everything's smooth. Coaching isn't needed when everything's smooth. It happens when the clock's ticking, the orders are stacking, and you choose to slow the room down instead of speed it up. That's when your influence matters most. Now, if today's sessions hit home, keep the conversation going. Connect with me on Caterlinked. Reach out to me, jasonnebrooks.com. And if you ever want to go deeper on systems, team leadership, on coaching, check out my books. Every team needs coaching, and every leader needs followers. These help keep developing those frameworks that allow your team to run without you. It keeps it alive without you having to chase that day down. Thank you for joining me on today's coaching corner. And remember, consistency is the byproduct of great coaching. So manage, lead, coach, and repeat. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have an awesome Wednesday.